Hey everyone, welcome to the final lecture of Chapter 4, and today we're talking about the dative case, and particularly we're talking about the dative of indirect object. Okay, so the dative case in Latin is used for the indirect object of a sentence. So let's talk about what an indirect object is. Okay, so an indirect object is when you have basically two objects in a sentence. You'll have a direct object with an indirect object. And so here's an example of a sentence with both a direct and indirect object. Okay, so I give the money to the girl. Okay, give is the verb, money is the direct object, and the girl is the indirect object. Okay, you can also write this sentence as I give the girl money. I like to think of it with the to, though, because remember that when we translate the dative case, we translate the dative as either to or for, so that always helps me remember that what we're talking about is the dative. But you can write it as I give the girl money. That's the same exact idea grammatically, and so here we have, in the second sentence, two objects. Okay, girl is the indirect object. I'm just going to abbreviate IO for indirect object, and the money is the direct object. So when you're distinguishing between the direct and the indirect object, think about what you're actually doing. I'm giving, well, what am I giving? I'm giving the money. To whom am I giving it? I'm giving it to the girl. So you're not giving the girl, you're giving the money to the girl. And that's how you tell the difference between the direct object and the indirect object. Okay, let's write this sentence in Latin now. So I can use my pronoun ego if I want to. I don't have to though. Okay, so ego, and then money, because it's the direct object, has to of course be in the accusative case. So pecuniam. Okay, girl is the indirect object, and of course by the title of our talk we know that the indirect object has to be dative. So the dative singular of girl is I. And now I give, do is to give, and do is I give. Okay, so ego, which is optional, remember that pronoun just adds emphasis. Ego pecuniam puelli do. I give the money to the girl, or I give the girl money. So pecuniam is our direct object because it's accusative, and puelli is our indirect object because it's dative. Okay, let's do another example. First of all, before we do another example, I should say that the indirect object is used with verbs of giving, showing, and telling. So give, show, and tell. And we've actually learned all of these verbs. So give is do, dare. Okay, to give. Show is monstro, monstrare, or demonstro, demonstrare. And tell is naro, narrare. So if you are going to have an indirect object, sorry, it's a T, definitely a T. Okay, let's just do it again. That was bad. T, tell. Okay, so if you're going to have an indirect object in a sentence, you're going to have one of these three verbs. Give, which is do, show, monstro, or demonstro, and tell, naro. Okay, so let's give another example of a sentence with an indirect object. Okay, so dei templum nautis monstrant. Okay, so in this sentence, dei, the gods, right, that's nominative plural, second declension. The gods, what do the gods do? Okay, show, the gods show. What do they show? They show the direct object, the temple. And to whom do they show it? Nautis, the sailors. So the gods show the temple to the sailors. Okay, so nautis is dative case, so it's the indirect object. Templum is accusative, so it's the direct object. Dei is nominative, so it's the subject. Okay, we could also write this sentence as the gods show the sailors the temple. Okay, so you can write an indirect object without actually using the English preposition to, but I like to include it just because, remember, dative case, when we translate it, generally is to or for, so that always helps me remember that we are in the dative case. Okay, let's do one more example of an indirect object. Okay, here's another sentence with an indirect object in it. So poeta, the poet. Okay, what does he do? He narrates. So the poet tells. What is he telling? The story. To whom is he telling it? To the men. Okay, so wearies is dative plural, so it's the indirect object, and fabulam is accusative, so it is the direct object. So an indirect object is always put into the dative case, and it's used with verbs that mean give, show, or tell. And so you give something to someone, you show something to someone, or you tell something to someone. And that's it for this lecture, and thanks for tuning in, and looking forward to seeing you guys again next time.